Okay, can everybody hear me? Yes? Okay. So what I wanted to do, full transparency, vulnerability, I think that when depression became both a medical diagnosis on a biological level and also just simply an emotion, there were a lot of people who felt as though they didn't have permission to say, I'm depressed, because the idea was that it had to be something medical and they couldn't just confide that in another human being without obviously being encouraged to seek professional help, when a lot of us throughout our entire lives will experience sorrow and depression and a feeling of self-defeat. So what I wanted to do was I wanted to offer some of the key points that have worked for myself and my friends, who some of them battle with crippling depression, so much so that it becomes debilitating. And that removes a lot of their abilities to create a positive outcome, to enhance their level of optimism, because they find themselves almost incapable of physically moving for hours and sometimes days. Like I said, I wanted to utilize all that I've learned in my life and the advice that I've received from friends, because there's a lot of people, especially what's going on here. We have the pandemic, we have isolation, quarantine, and here, especially in Louisiana, we have a lot of people who are dealing with a lot of sorrow, a lot of grief, and a lot of loss. And obviously, the human beings, we all process things at our own time and take our own allocation in order to do so. But for those people who do want, who do seek a positive outlook, a positive perspective, and a sense of optimism, I've composed this. So I wanted to first talk about the word morale, because I think far too often we see it only when it comes to work or war. Morale is not necessarily having specifically to do with a group. However, you hear it all the time in work, especially if you're in a leadership position. We have to increase morale, which means increase productivity, which means increase capital gains. But morale, in its most simple form, is just simply the confidence, enthusiasm, and discipline of any person, any group at any particular time. So this is about boosting that, your morale. The key thing to do before I even get into the breakdown is to take a moment to calibrate. And again, that word normally is utilized when you are talking about machinery, but we essentially, even though we are humans, biological beings, we are still fundamentally well-oiled machines. So take a moment to calibrate. What does that mean? That means take a moment to gain a true, full understanding of where you are currently, like right now. Where are you? Not just in your home, in that room, but where are you as far as where you envisioned yourself to be at this point, without doting too much on how far you might have deviated from that plan. But the reason why it's so important to identify where you are right now, to calibrate, as I put it, is because you can't be lost if you don't know where you're going. You're wandering. Take a moment to think about that, because oftentimes people say, I feel lost. But if you don't have a specific destination, whether metaphorically, emotionally, or literally, you're not lost. And that's okay. It's okay to meander, it's okay to wander, because it provides an opportunity for you to just truly be present rather than focusing specifically on where it is that you need to be. So it's okay to just be where you are and not obsess over where you're supposed to be. Now, before I get into the breakdown of the four categories are digital, visual, physical, and verbal. Again, digital, visual, physical, verbal. Before I get into that, there's something that we need to focus on. When it comes to joy, happiness is one of those very elusive things that people will find ways to exploit the idea of selling you happiness. I don't know where I heard the quote, but I've lived with it my whole life. Happiness is not wondering whether or not you are. You know, you think far too often, am I happy? And in that moment, the fact that you pulled yourself out of being present and immersed means, how can you possibly find joy if you are putting your life under a petri dish? Now, the important thing as I examine these points is what brings you joy before you do it, while you're doing it, and after you've done it. Think about that. What consistently brings you joy before, during, and after? Now let's get into the breakdown. My advice to you, 4 different ones. We're going to start off with digital. We're going to start off with the smallest ones to the largest ones. This is just helpful advice. Pick and choose as you see fit. First and foremost, really, really, really try your best to stay off social media. I understand. The argument presented long ago was, I have an aunt that lives in Costa Rica and she mysteriously has no phone, so how else am I going to communicate with her? When we all know you can pretty much call anyone internationally, worldwide, at a reduced rate, if not basically within your phone plan. The reason why, there's 3 key points to try and wean the amount of time you're spending on social media. One is what I call a false sense of inclusion. A false sense of inclusion means you're not actively communicating with people because the fact that you're friends on Facebook or you're part of their Twitter feed leads you to believe that you are as informed of their life as they would prefer. A false sense of inclusion means that your body is being tricked into being more aware of the current emotional and physical state of the people you care for. If you remove that, then you're more inclined to communicate with them directly. Second reason to stay off social media is unhealthy comparisons. You're looking at yourself, your hair is up in a bun, no makeup, no nothing, men and women talking to both of you. And you're looking at these photos of other people. We're all skilled to some extent in Photoshop. What's happening is you are comparing your life to theirs, but you're comparing the entirety of all your memories and moments to the cherry-picked, primed versions of their life. The third reason to stay off social media is because it causes you to be unfocused. Even if you go onto Facebook to look specifically for a coworker or an old high school friend, you will not start and end simply with that singular task. You find yourself perusing endlessly on the Facebook feed, on Twitter, on Instagram, and before you know it, hours have passed and you've accomplished essentially nothing. Second advice, digital-wise, leave positive Google reviews, not negative. Leave positive Google reviews. As anyone who runs a business will tell you, it means so much that word of mouth would show its way onto the page of anyone else. Some of the favorite businesses that you've been supporting financially or encouraging other people to go to, endorsing, they are still struggling. They're struggling to maintain their dream or to build it even higher. When you leave a positive Google review, it's a beautiful, well-crafted present that you've left on their digital doorstep. It actually increases the amount of traffic that they get because the main keywords used in Google reviews increase the traffic, the search engine optimization for the businesses, and come at no additional advertising dollars to the business itself. So if you're sitting there wondering, how can I help this amazing restaurant or this niche store? Leave a positive Google review. Third advice for digital, be very deliberate and intentional with internet searches and use. This goes back to the social media, but oftentimes you're sitting there, you're watching a movie and you're like, was George Clooney in that? Hold on, let me search. Before you know it, the movie has ended. Your spouse or whoever's watching the movie with you is just sitting there like, where did you go? Be very deliberate, be very intentional, be very specific with how you utilize the internet. Fourth point for digital, reduce, and if not, completely minimize online purchases. There is a concept called buyer's remorse. Amazon doesn't care about it, but you do, you need to. Buyer's remorse is when you feel good, you see something, it's brightly colored, it's inexpensive, and you say to yourself, I work hard, I deserve it. Then it shows up on your doorstep and on your credit card bill. You open the box and you say to yourself, why did I get this? What did I think I was going to do with this? You find yourself emotionally tearing yourself apart, not once, but on numerous occasions for things you did not need or didn't actually want. Now, there is a trillion-dollar business that goes into attracting you as a consumer to these items and being convinced that you absolutely need to have it. But don't give way to those people. Another reason to minimize your online purchases, it produces tons of clutter. Think about it. When you physically go out to a store, you wouldn't put all of these things in a physical cart. You wouldn't carry around the heavy bags. You wouldn't deal with the extraneous packaging. But when you just click and add it to your online cart, it's a different concept. The end result is that your home is that shopping cart, and you will have to deal with the clutter. Now, the third reason to reduce your online purchases is because it puts you in a frivolous amount of debt. I mean, we're all dealing with it to some extent, except for Christian. I mean, he's super rich, but the rest of us deal with a lot of financial struggles. And as we are sitting there trying to manage our finances, we need to focus specifically on the essentials, not the desirables, the essentials. Now, next category, let's go into visual, but let's transition from digital. This is in the visual sense. Stop hoarding data and info. What does this mean? Imagine you look in your phone, and your phone is this physical space, and every number you have in your phone is a page, a physical piece of paper, and you have 270 pages stacked on your coffee table. See, when it comes to digital archiving, we say to ourselves, well, I have all of this music because it's not like I'm storing records or CDs, or I have all of these films, or I have all of these phone numbers in my phone. What you don't realize is the detrimental effect that it has on your aesthetics. As you are perusing your phone, navigating to the people you are actively in communication with, you're scrolling through tons of people that you are either avoiding or are worried that have forgotten or are avoiding you. Delete. Ask yourself, who do I actually talk to? Here's an analogy. I say you should treat your phone like you treat your fridge. You wouldn't put a whole bunch of food in your fridge if the last time you ate it, it left a bad taste in your mouth or made you sick. If the last time you spoke to someone, that conversation ended very unpleasant, remove them from your fridge. Pull away from the screen. Budget your time the same as your money. Time is money. And as you get older, you exchange one more for the other. Pull away from the screen. Watch one episode, not one season. Redecorate. There's a lot of autonomy that goes on to your life and monotony that happens as well. It's just you, and it's just the same route every time from your kitchen to your living room. Redecorate, change the space, and it'll actually have a lot of effect on your internal mental psyche. Utilize. Treasure what you have. This will actually help you from making more frivolous purchases, because oftentimes you don't realize that we actually have something that serves that same purpose. We just didn't want to take the time to find out where it was. So it's inexpensive to just simply replace it. Before you know it, you have 4 of what you thought you once had 0. Reduce the things in your home. Keep around the things that you actively use, things that have positive memories attached to them. So when you see them, they don't make you frown, they don't make you miserable, they make you smile and make you feel useful. Reduce your wardrobe. I say this all the time. If your life was this beautiful stage performance, you'd want to wear the kind of costume that really conveys the character you're portraying. If you have clothes that don't fit you, that don't flatter you, you have clothes that haven't aged well, be rid of them. And what you'll find is you're more comfortable inside and out because you're adorning yourself, you're decorating yourself with who you are now and not forcing yourself to be who you were back when you first purchased it or when it felt more appropriate. Let's get into physical. You guys enjoying this so far? Is this useful? Okay, awesome. Move. Like, not, you don't have to relocate, change your address or anything. That's really complicated, especially right now, but just move. There's something called a pulmonary embolism. I'm looking at all of you. Can you raise your hand if you have ever heard pulmonary embolism? Okay, so guess what? It's like similar to an aneurysm. It's a blood clot that can form in anyone of any age if they don't move for long periods of time. It's killed teenagers left and right, sitting and playing video games for 10, 15, 20 hours. So move, because non-movement is the silent killer and it will find you. Where the mind goes, the body follows, but the inverse is also true. Move around. A lot of us probably do this when we're on the phone. We pace, we walk around, because if the body's moving, the mind is moving. Go for a walk in your home, around your neighborhood. And what that causes is additional external stimuli so that your decisions don't find themselves being so mundane or overly inconsistent. Move. Fourth category, I see the post-it, moving quickly. Verbal. Check in with other people. Check in with other people. Share your goals with the people you care for. Hey, I was thinking about learning this thing. Hey, I'm thinking about taking this class. Hey, I signed up for this. Check in with them. Let them know what's going on. Don't wait for them to ask, well, how are you doing? What have you been up to? Take initiative to reach out to the people that you care about. The reason why that's so important is because hopefully, if they care about you, they're going to hold you accountable. So a week after, they're going to check in and say, hey, how are things going with that thing you're doing? Hey, I heard you were decorating the house. When are you going to invite me over to see it? You need accountability, because that's people's way of letting you know that they care, that they're actively listening. And the key word to actively listening is active. Ask other people for feedback and advice. It's daunting, the millions and millions of dollars that people pay for advice when all of their friends and family are willing to give it for free. Now, mind you, you get what you pay for. So, but why it's so important to ask people for advice is because it's one thing to say that they matter. It's one thing to say that you love them. It's one thing to say that you care for them. But when you invite them into your life, when they're actively in a position where they can influence the path that you're taking, they know you care for them. They know you love them. And they have probably dealt with trials and tribulations that felt purposeless. Like they go through this horrible, horrible tragedy and they come out of it and they're like, well, lesson learned, but for who? The lesson might not be for them. The information that they gather from what they've endured might be best intended to help you. And finally, this might not be verbal, but it's definitely auditory. Play music. Some of my favorite movies also have some of my favorite soundtracks. I don't, there are weird people who can drive for long periods of time or clean their house without music. They're insane and probably need a lot of medical attention. I can't. I cannot clean my house. I cannot drive long periods of time without music playing. But honestly, in the dead silence of things, my mind stirs way too much. So I'd rather have pleasant music in the background. So again, I'm going to go back to my beginning point and then I'm done. What brings you joy? What brings you joy when you're thinking about doing it, when you're preparing to purchase whatever it may be? What brings you joy while you're doing it, while you're utilizing it, while you're there? And what brings you joy afterwards? Doesn't leave you feeling like you wasted time or wasted money or wasted energy. The most important thing you can do is make sure that as much of your time, money, and attention is given towards things that do all of that. They make you smile when you're thinking about it. They make you smile while you're doing it. And they make you smile when you remember it. Thank you all so much.